Most 26-year-olds are not supposed to die because of not having insulin. This is Alex Smith, who died at age 26 because he could not afford insulin in America. Alec worked as a restaurant manager who made $35,000 a year. A pharmacist told him that his insulin would cost $1,300 a month without insurance as he was aging out of his mother's insurance plan after turning 26. Alex started rationing his life-saving insulin and was found dead a month after he turned 26. According to the American Diabetes Association, there are 30 million Americans have diabetes and 7.4 million depending on insulin. However, insulin prices have been skyrocketing. In 1996, it cost around $21 for a vial, but it costs almost $300 for a vial as of today. And people with diabetes will require 2 to 4 vials per month. There are 3 major manufacturers of insulin: Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi. Here's what the changes in prices of Humalog and Novolog have looked like since 1996, with prices essentially in lockstep with one another. Over the past decade, the list prices of the two drugs have increased by 290%. Also, there are some startling differences in insulin prices between US and other countries. A vial of Humalog in US is $285, while in Canada, the same vial costs $32. This results in a growing number of Americans crossing the border into Canada to get their insulin.
Then why pharmaceuticals cost so much in the US? The answer is that while individual patients have practically no bargaining power when buying prescription drugs, that's not at all true of governments. Virtually every other government in the world finds that pharmaceutical companies would rather lower prices significantly than simply not to sell in a particular country. So other governments bargain with the pharmaceutical companies on behalf of their citizens, and this type of bargaining significantly lowers the price of brand name medications in these countries. The one exception is the US government, because US law prohibits our government from taking any active role in negotiating the price exchange by the pharmaceutical companies. Instead, we use pharmacy benefit manager to bargain for us, and the PBMs tend to side with pharmaceutical companies and actually prefer higher drug prices. And for all practical purposes, that's the reason we pay more than anyone else in the world for prescription drugs.
Unregulated market pricing of pharmaceuticals, an essential drug, and a profit-driven decision maker are the basic components of how Martin Shkreli managed to legally jack up the price of a 62-year-old anti-infective, Daraprim, from $13.5 to $750. This is a 5,000% increase on a medication that was used to treat opportunistic infection in babies and AIDS patients. The World Health Organization even included Daraprim on its list of essential medications that all basic healthcare system must have. Although ethically questionable and condemnable, Shkreli did not break any rules, because our healthcare system is uniquely allowing drug makers to name their price, any price, and Daraprim's fate is just the latest example. Under this infrastructure, even Medicare, our country's largest insurance plan, would have to pay in full for Daraprim, because it has no power to negotiate bulk discounts with drug makers. Perhaps Martin Shkreli is not our biggest problem after all. Although drug manufacturers are partly to blame for the increase in drug costs, they are doing it legally by blaming the increased costs due to clinical trials and getting FDA approved. One way we can prevent ridiculous drug increases is to allow Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate drug prices and require drug makers to report and justify significant planned increase. Currently in Washington state, the Senate has approved a proposal to increase drug price transparency and is headed to the House for consideration. Along with drug information, the bill would require details on the size of the cut taken by the middleman, including insurance companies. This proposal would provide less reward and profit for discovery research, potentially leading to less new drugs on the market, but a pushback from drug manufacturers would lead to a loss in customer. Another way to reduce the cost burn on drug companies is to boost FDA funding to speed generic drug reviews to encourage the FDA to okay products approved in other advanced countries and to ease generic companies' access to brand name drug samples to increase alternative therapies. This would allow a shorter turnover time for generics to be on the market and reduce their costs. This would also give an easier process
for generic companies to gain access to brand name products to conduct testing of generic versions prior to the brand product patent expiration. Rapid production in generics would allow for more accessibility for the public while reducing medication costs in the long run. But none of this would happen if everybody keeps pointing their finger at each other and not taking some responsibility in the increased cost of medication. Thank you for your time and attention. This concludes our videocast.